If you're taking out a bounce back loan and your business is now struggling, you're probably worrying about being made personally liable for the loan, maybe being investigated, potentially losing your home, or even going to prison. Now, there are tens of thousands of directors in the UK right now who don't know what to do. They're losing sleep. They're worried about the family's future. There are so many unanswered questions when it actually comes to businesses who genuinely cannot pay back their bounce back loan. Now, please, if you made the wrong move, you've tried to dissolve your company with a bounce back loan, you inflated your turnover, you took one when you wasn't meant to, or you spent it all personally, you could end up having to pay it all back. Some people have gone to prison. Some people will lose their houses over this. The story is still developing. Now, there are countless directors now who have gone to prison for bounce back loan fraud, and there's a common theme, okay? They've took a loan that they weren't entitled to, so they weren't trading, or they've took more than they were entitled to. So remember, you was able to apply for 25% of 2019's turnover, capped at 50 grand. Turnover 10 grand, you could take 2.5 grand. Turnover 100 grand, you could take 25 grand. You couldn't estimate your turnover if you was incorporated before 2019. You could only estimate it if you was incorporated in 2019. And even then, you need to keep your workings out. Now, this is a huge problem for many directors. I want you to watch this video to the end, and I'm going to explain everything you need to know if you genuinely can't pay back your bounce back loan. Okay, if you can't pay the bounce back loan, what are your options? Well, the first one is something called your pay as you grow, okay? P-A-Y-G. Now, a pay as you go is the ability to restructure that loan with the bank on your online banking, and there's a number of pay as you grow options. You could extend the term from 6 years to 10 years, okay? You could reduce your monthly payments with interest only periods, so you can go on interest only for 6 months at a time, up to 3 times, and you could even take a payment holiday for 6 months. This is where you don't get charged anything for 6 months. And these options they're there to help ease cash flow. Now, if you do any of those options, I want you to be aware that your interest increases, okay? But remember, this was 2.5%. It was the cheapest money you're ever going to get. Now, another thing is, well, what happens if you just stop paying it? Okay, your business can't afford to pay it. Well, not a great deal happens to a business who can't pay the bounce back loan. Like literally, if you cancel the standing order of the direct debit and you spoke to the bank and say, listen, I've ran out of my pay as you grow options, business still hasn't improved, I need another 6 months breathing space. If you explain to them that it's causing you stress and anxiety, I'm not putting words in your mouth, right? But the majority of directors I speak to that are going through this problem are having sleepless nights over it. They'll essentially stop it. They'll leave you alone for a period of time. You might want to ask them also to stop any interest. But if you stop paying that bounce back loan, there's very little the bank can do. Because you've got to remember, there's no personal guarantees. The bank can't force you to pay the bounce back loan. And here's the reality. It was an ideal loan. The government will pay the banks if you don't pay. And if you don't pay, there's no personal guarantees. They're 100% unsecured. The government provides 100% guarantee to the lender. And here's the crazy thing, right? Some banks will have already claimed on the bounce back loan guarantee for your business, but they've not told you about it, okay? The only time you're going to be made personally liable for a bounce back loan for your business is if fraud is involved. If you are a general average Joe or Jolene and your business cannot pay the bounce back loan back and you speak to the bank, your home or your personal assets are safe, right? Unless fraud is proven. And let's dive into that. What constitutes bounce back loan fraud? Well, the key fraud triggers really are, number one, you overstated your turnover to get a larger loan, right? I said it earlier. You was able to estimate turnover if you was incorporated in 2019, right? And you could claim up to 50 grand, but keep your workings out, because I've seen people liquidate, incorporated in 2019, took 50 grand, and they're still getting headaches now from the insolvency service. So keep your workings out. If you was incorporated before 2019, you had to use 2019's turnover, and you could take 25% of it. If you overstated your turnover, that constitutes bounce back loan fraud, okay? If you use the bounce back loan personally, right? And there's a few areas with this I'm going to talk to you about. If you got a 30 grand bounce back loan on the Monday, and on the Tuesday you sent it yourself personally, and you go into insolvency, that is a problem, okay? That is not for the benefit of the business. When you borrowed a bounce back loan, you had to use it for the benefit of the business that took it. If you sent it to another company, if you sent it to your mate or your sister or your aunt or your turtle, you're going to get in trouble for it. Now, if you use the bounce back loan personally, but you spent that 30 grand over sort of 12, 18, 24 months in line with previous earnings, you're not going to get criticised for that, but you've probably incurred something called an overdrawn director's loan account, okay? And that's an area where you might get made personally liable for that amount of money that you owe the company, but it's not bounce back loan fraud. Now, the consequences of bounce back loan, they're quite frightening. I mean, there's loads of investigations going on. You know, the insolvency service have really beefed up their team. Labour, part of their manifesto is we are going to get more money back from these people that have robbed the public purse. So lots of disqualifications are happening. We're seeing criminal charges quite regularly now. One of the bits of advice that is absolutely blowing my mind that people are getting is if you've took a bounce back loan, strike the company off. If I had a hammer, I'd hit myself over the hammer. I'm that annoyed by it. You can't dissolve a company that's taking a bounce back loan. It's a mistake, because when you strike it off, it will trigger a creditor objection from the bank, right? Now, there was a law brought in, right? It's called the Ratings, Coronavirus and Directors Disqualification Dissolve Companies Act 2021. Easy for you to say. And that new law basically says you can't dissolve a company that's took a bounce back loan. But there are still idiots out there advising directors, strike the company off, it'll go. No, you can't do that. The loan remains unpaid. And you know the ones that have got struck off, they're the ones that have gone to bloody prison. And if you slip through the net, it could still be reinstated for investigation. So please, you've got to really address this stuff properly. Listen, one of the options is liquidation. You know, a creditor's voluntary liquidation, where you go to a liquidator, the business is insolvent, I can't pay my debts when they fall due. But most companies have got a bounce back loan that go into liquidation, or a C-bills loan. As long as you've done nothing wrong with that bounce back loan, it'll go into liquidation, you won't hear any more of it. But if you took it when you shouldn't have took it, I mean, honest to God, I get it all the time. Hiya Chris, want to talk to you about my bounce back loan. Okay, John, John's made up, all right? Okay, John, what's your company name? Okay. John Smith Limited. How long did it take to come up with that name, John? Right, John, in 2020, you filed dormant accounts. And in 2021, in fact, John, you've only ever filed dormant accounts. You shouldn't have took your bounce back loan. Bugger off, leave me alone. Let me deal with directors who have actually got a problem that I can help. If you've took a bounce back loan and you're a dormant company and you put it into liquidation, you're gonna get in trouble. My advice to you is pay the bloody thing back. And that's the same thing if you've vastly overstated your turnover. You know, if you weren't entitled to take a bounce back loan, or you took one and you overstated your turnover, and you go into liquidation, you're going to get disqualified. There's going to be issues that you're going to be faced with. Now, The banks now are forcing certain companies through the courts to be wound up. And there's only, not every bank's doing this yet, but they're focusing on those companies where they believe that bounce back loan fraud has taken place, right? And the winding up process, again, we've got to sort of see how this all pans out. But the winding up companies that they suspect fraud has taken place. And what will happen is the official receiver will get this job once you've been wound up, and then the consequences will come. Again, those that have mishandled bounce back loans, took one when they shouldn't have took one, the net's tightening up, okay? Now, the way that banks handle bounce back loan defaults, right, it's quite interesting. So let's say that you are can't pay your bounce back loan, right? You ring up the bank and you say, listen, my business hasn't got a you know to what in or a window to throw it out of. Keep it clean, we're on YouTube. It's causing me stress and anxiety. What can I do? They'll offer you pay as you grow options, but that might not be suitable for you. They're then going to pass you on to a debt collector. And it's not going to be like a debt collector who comes at your house. They can write to you and they can ring you. And you could do a deal with that debt collector and pay it back over the next 20 years. You think I'm being ridiculous? Honest to God, they're accepting paying it back at £1 a week. It's crazy. If you just can't pay it back and you can't afford any money, and they'll say to you, listen, Chris, if you can't, how are you going to pay this? You know, I just want to remind you, you're not personally liable for this. It's the most soft-touch debt collectors you're ever going to come across. Please don't be frightened of it. Because remember, these debt collectors, they can't do anything other than write a letter or come and phone you. Now, the debt collectors are just doing the job for the banks. Now, I think eventually, right, I actually do think that loads of these companies are going to get wound up. But if you've done nothing wrong and you get wound up, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. This video, if you've done stuff wrong with the bounce back loan, my advice to you is pay it back. Pay it back over a longer period of time. If you've done nothing wrong with your bounce back loan and you can't afford sort of £5 to liquidate the business, eventually I think you'll get wound up. And when you get wound up, you go and see the official receiver and you'll tell him everything. You'll tell him how you struggled and how you couldn't pay the bounce back loan back, and you tried to do your best, and I don't think anything will happen. Remember, these are the opinions of me, Chris Worden. I don't represent anyone other than Chris Worden. I might be wrong, but I've been doing this a long time. Key summarisations: use pay as you grow if possible. You've got no personal guarantee, so your assets are safe unless you've committed fraud, okay? Speak to the banks, okay? Don't strike the bloody company off. Now, please, if the video helped, please like and subscribe. If you put a question, I'll answer it personally. In my next video, I'll be talking about dealing with HMRC debts when your business is struggling, so don't miss it. Subscribe now.